Does sustainability storytelling inspire change? Now, you've got the most incredible panel who are going to come up and are going to answer that in detail. Spoiler alert, the answer is yes. And with that, I would love to hand over to Ellis, who many of you will know is the Director of Entertainment at Rare's Entertainment Lab. So Ellis, coming up here. Let's give him a proper applause.
Hello, oh yes, this is on. This is amazing, wow. Normally you say research and like the room clears. So this is like incredible, I might pass out. Thank you so much everyone for being here. I'm Ellis Watamanuk, as Cyle mentioned.
I'm Anirudh.
And we are the Entertainment Lab at Rare. So for those who don't know, Rare is a global environmental nonprofit that works to inspire sustainability all around the world. Our work in entertainment supports creators who not only want to reflect the realities of our changing climate, but also highlight the everyday solutions that are around us. We're kind of nerds at Rare. We love data, we love research, but I'm really hoping that we're in good company today, and also with fellow nerds, because I think we're all asking the same question. What if I just forgot the question? It's not, it's the title of the panel. So does sustainability storytelling inspire change? So we're here to help answer that question. We have an amazing roster of folks and creators who come up and chat about their projects and the research behind it. But we do just want to take a few minutes to set the stage. If you've seen some panels here earlier today, or maybe you've heard elsewhere at Climate Week, so many creators are putting these solutions and these themes on screen. But there's an important question, which is, do audiences want this? Is there support for this? The answer, overwhelmingly, is yes.
So we asked this question. It's obviously a very important question. So we asked it a bunch of times.
Everyone just ignore this.
Yes.
Don't look at this. It's very trigger happy. Okay.
Right. And what we found was 7 in 10 Americans would like to see Hollywood put more climate actions and climate solutions on screen in order to help fight climate change. We asked this question, again, because it's important. We validated this twice with large samples. We asked it a bunch of different ways. The number does not change. And in fact, when you look at the top 53% of Americans in terms of climate concern, that number is between 88 and 95%. So essentially near unanimous, right? And once you account for climate concern, none of the other demographic variables matter. Household income, ethnicity, and even political orientation ceases to be particularly predictive. So what we see is kind of a broad consensus, especially among the top half of America. And despite partisanship, 70% of Americans are in fact on board with climate solutions on screen.
And don't just take our word. There are others finding this as well. So the Aspen Institute finds that over 70% of parents and caregivers in the US agree that children's media should include climate solutions. That's incredible. And our friends across the pond in the UK, the Behavioral Insights team finds that over 70% of Britons also support more climate-friendly behaviors within TV content and more of these issues and themes explicitly in feature films as well. So that's great. We know that creators are doing this work, that audiences want it. What does this actually look like? So we are very lucky to have a few examples. Amazing. So I'm very, very excited by this. I'm a huge Sex and the City fan. I don't know if anyone else is. Let's hear it out. Yeah, okay, great. I always joke I'm not a scientist, but I have a PhD in Sex and the City. So come to me. So I was really excited to see that the latest season of And Just Like That, the reboot, incorporated a handful of climate-friendly actions. We are just going to choose one. In this scene that you're about to see, the iconic Miranda and Charlotte are out to lunch, grabbing a quick bite, and you'll see there's just a very subtle plant-based order happening.
Next. Hi. Can I get 2 tacos?
Next.
I have no appetite.
Right. I'm not 100% if everybody caught that, but there was a moment there where she orders steak, then she changes her mind, and she orders the plant-based version. So that created a perfect opportunity for us to cut this in different ways. Either cut out the part where she orders plant-based, so we have just a meat order, cut out the part where she orders steak, so we just have a plant-based order, or we keep the original. What we did was we looked at the demographics for people who watched that episode using Nielsen data, and then recruited, quota matched 2,000 people to watch randomly one of those 3 versions of the clip. And then we measured perceived entertainment value, social norms, how normal they thought plant-based diets were, the benefits and barriers, as well as their intention to take action in terms of ordering plant-based. What did we find? It turns out being exposed to a brief, fleeting moment on screen boosted people's perceptions that trendsetters are currently reducing meat, that they're going to be reducing meat in the future, and crucially, they think that other people should reduce meat. Now, let me pause here for a second, since as a behavioral scientist, this is terribly exciting. I'm very, very excited about social norms. Social norms are highly predictive of people adopting behavior. And especially, we are very concerned what other people think we should do. So the fact that this brief clip moved that last variable, I mean, the first 2 are important, but that last variable should give us a lot of reason to be excited. In addition, we asked about the benefits associated with plant-based diets. And surprisingly, we find that even that fleeting exposure boosted people's perceptions about the health benefits of eating plant-based and the environmental benefits of eating plant-based. Note, the scene never mentioned anything about the environment or health. People have pre-existing associations, so even a fleeting exposure can activate those and strengthen them. Okay, so we've talked about the social norms part. There's some other exciting things here. It also boosted the belief that it's the right thing to do, which is pretty exciting. That's another great predictor. And crucially, it did not impact the entertainment value at all or the liking of the characters on screen. So again, things that really should make us all excited.
Rest assured, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What did not move? People's self-efficacy, their sense that they can actually take action, that is quite critical. And as a result, we also did not see movement on the stated intention to act. But we should not be surprised. These are very brief moments. The moment was tiny. It was a 1 second. And so...
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think even that a fleeting moment can move audiences in that way is incredible. I especially think, as I mentioned, I'm a huge fan. I remember 20 years ago in the original series, there is an entire episode dedicated to sort of making a joke about plant-based eating. Samantha famously meets her love interest of the series, Smith, at a vegan restaurant. And I think I'm saying I think as if I don't have the entire episode memorized. There's a line where they call the soup lawn in a bowl. So 20 years later, to see that plant-based eating is shown on screen as normal, just as it is in real life, is really, really incredible. And it's helping audiences see that as well. I also think from a creative standpoint, this is great because it shows we love those big climate stories. We love when climate is sort of front and center, but you can still make a difference. You can still inspire audiences if you're a creator, no matter where you are in the writer's room, with little moments like this. And I think that's really exciting.
And then since I am the scientist pessimist in the room, this was a small impact. We're going to need to repeat this. And what's happening and what's exciting is that it is repeating. People are putting these kinds of scenes on screen. And as these scenes start showing up again and again and again, these little moments start accruing, they start accumulating. And what we would anticipate is that as we get media saturation through the ecosystem, this should start really transforming into massive, large-scale moments that inspire audiences to do this at home.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. He's the Miranda to my Carrie. He keeps me grounded. So, and that's the last Sex and the City joke we'll make. So we are going to stick on the same behavior, plant-based eating, but we're going to mix things up a little bit, change the genres and formats, and look at unscripted. So our first guest is an unscripted television executive producer and founder of Reality of Change, an amazing eco-entertainment organization focused on advancing climate solutions and sustainability in unscripted TV. Previously, he was the head of alternative programming at the CW network. Please welcome my friend Cyle Zezo. We'll open it up. So Cyle, I was actually going to introduce the show, but then I was like, wait, you're here. So do you mind just giving a nod to do some like log line pitch of Recipe for Disaster?
How do I do? Yeah, it's a crazy show. Basically, it's a cooking competition series, self-contained, that was designed for, with to reach audiences where it's like parents at home with their families or with their children. So not a children's show, but really like kind of a family-oriented show where we have 3 cooks come up every episode. They have to create spectacular dishes, but while they're doing that, they're being assaulted by whatever's going on in the show. So things are falling on them, flying at them, you know, the tables are tilting left and right. And so it's just completely bonkers. And in every episode, we tried to create a different setting or scenario to kind of theme it. And I think we're gonna show a clip, so you'll see a little bit of it here.
Your next challenge is the chef special.
Well done effort.
Thank you.
So just one thing I really love about that is how just naturally they talk about that plant-based challenge. From a research point of view, this was fantastic because the same episode contained 2 challenges. One was a turkey wing challenge, one was the veggie challenge. So we could keep everything constant, split the episode into 2 separate challenges, and randomly assign people to either watch one or the other and see what the impact of the different challenges was on audiences. The participants we recruited, we tried to match to the intended audience. So there were people between 25 and 55 with at least 1 child under the age of 13. We got a baseline measure 7 days before viewing, and then we surveyed them immediately post-viewing. And like before, we studied entertainment value, social norms, efficacy, can you take the action, intention to take action, benefits, barriers, as well as how they connect meat reduction to the climate. What did we find? Okay, as before, we see movement on social norms. This is about number of parents. People have the perception that after watching the plant-based challenge, the number of parents currently trying to reduce meat is higher. How many will be trying to reduce meat in the future is higher, and how many parents think other parents should be trying to reduce meat is also higher. Now, I want to just take a moment to pause here. These results should look a lot like AJLP to do, and that's very exciting, right? This is a completely different stimulus. It's a completely different population. It's a completely different question. This isn't about trendsetters, this is about parents, and we're seeing similar results, which should help us believe that what we're finding is generalizable. It's not about the specific content, but rather about moments on screen and how those impact audiences at home, and how they inspire people to think about people around them. We also saw benefits across a variety of measures. Social, how much I think people will think better of me, how much I feel like I'm keeping up with the trends, how much it will impact my appearance, as well as how much it will impact my health. We saw a greater amount of benefits, which is not, again, surprising. It was a bigger beat than what we saw in AJLT. And this part is really, really exciting. We also saw a boost in general self-efficacy, the belief that I can, in fact, reduce meat, and an increase in the confidence that I can take a traditionally meat-based dish, turn it plant-based, and still have it be filling, tasty, and nutritious. So huge, huge reasons to be excited. Ooh. Again, without impacting entertainment value.
And I'll move to this quickly for the sake of time, but if we have content creators sort of in the room, we also, there were some really exciting insights around some social media campaign that ran around the series. And so we also looked at the impact of that, if owners want to share the key insights.
Yeah, so we partnered up with a prominent social media influencer, the Crunch Bros, and we helped make we asked them to make a marketing video that went with the show. And then we had some group watch both the show and the marketing video. And what we saw was an even greater boost in self-efficacy, increase in information seeking. They wanted to know about the recipe more, an increase in self-reported intention to reduce meat in their own diet. So we got now in self-reported intention, but also we saw an increase in connection of meat to the climate, and very excitingly, an increase in how much they thought the show was entertaining, relevant, and would be relevant in the future. So lots of amazing little benefits there.
So that's we get the science out of the way. We have the opinionator here. So I guess first things first, Cyle, that was such a fun and unique way to incorporate plant-based eating into the series. And I'm wondering if you can just share, were there other moments and other episodes, and what was that process for you when you were executive producing?
Yeah, totally. So when I first started the show, I was actually still at the network, and then I moved into an executive producer role afterward. And while I was at the network, I really wanted to put climate and solutions on screen more, but I was struggling with how to communicate that to producers who were pitching me shows and developing shows with me. And as Jessica Thurston mentioned earlier on the previous panel, there's this idea, I think, that a lot of climate stories need to be like, especially in the unscripted space, they need to be like climate documentaries that are completely about that. And so we did some of those, and some of them worked for our audience, and but I really wanted to do it with the content that was specifically fitting our brand mandate. And so I started workshopping the ABCs of climate storytelling, which, developed over the course of a couple of years, and then ended up coming out with a tip sheet with Rare. So my organization, Reality of Change, and Rare have published this online, which you can find on our website. But it's just another framing device, but it was really helpful to kind of help clarify for these producers, like all the different ways you can incorporate this stuff. So A stands for A stories. So it's stories that are explicitly or implicitly about climate change. B stories are like we just saw in this example, where the series or the film may not be about climate change, but we can incorporate a climate arc in it. So this challenge, I think, qualifies as a sort of sustainability arc. Hello.
Hi, great.
And then the C in there stands for casual integrations. And we also did this throughout the series, where we just have, we got rid of gas stoves, which I think is pretty radical for a cooking show. I don't see really many others that do that. We had compost bins all over set that we saw on camera. We incorporated more plant-based chefs throughout. The clip we just saw from And Just Like That was a great example, I think, of a casual integration where it's not necessarily a storyline at all. It's just figuring out ways to fit it in seamlessly. And Anirudh, to your point, that you made earlier as well, we're not thinking that casual integrations are necessarily going to change the world on their own, just on an individual level. But if we can deploy them at scale and sort of change norms across our industry, then we can change norms, hopefully, among our viewership as well.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, speaking of norms, were there any of these insights from that sort of surprised you or excited you or kind of got you thinking?
So the one that made me the most pleased, I think, to see was the confidence boost. I think it kind of proves 2 points that specifically highlight the strength of unscripted and the potential there. One of them is clearly, if people are like getting this confidence from this, they're getting something from this. They're getting some takeaway. And unscripted TV, I think, it uniquely, compared to scripted, has some opportunities for takeaway as well. But we often think of unscripted TV as like reality shows, and it definitely incorporates that, and that is super important. It also includes cooking competition shows like this. It includes home renovation shows. It includes fashion. And when people are watching those shows, they are expecting some level of takeaway. So we say don't preach, but there are some instances where we might actually be able to kind of, as long as we're leading with entertainment, we might be able to like share some information that's going to be meaningful to a receptive audience. So that was one thing that I thought it proved that, the confidence. But then the other thing is that also uniquely, applying to unscripted, is that we're seeing real people on television going through these challenges. So as a viewer, you can kind of see yourself. If you're seeing an actor, on screen in a scripted show, like that's really awesome because you can curate that character to like, really reach, touch on certain points and, be emotionally appealing and all of that. But when you can see someone going through like a cooking challenge like this, and like you're like, oh, I could be the person on that show. You can really like specifically relate to that. Yeah. So I love that confidence.
Yeah, it shows the power of like sort of showing the struggle and people overcoming the struggle barriers and finding the solution. So
totally.
As sort of parting words, do you see there's a very big clock ticking down, so it's a fight for Bodhi. But I wonder if you could just sort of share, are you seeing any trends specifically in the space of unscripted that you just kind of want to share with the realm?
Well, okay, there's 2 things I'm going to mention. I'll try to be quick. One is kind of negative, but it's going to get to the positive, right? The first is, this is not new. We know there are nefarious interests who, want to keep things as they have been. And especially with the industry in the state that it is right now, with like a lot of, financial issues, I think there's a risk, and we're actually seeing it happen. We've seen the reaction to plant-based foods getting so popular a few years ago. I think there was the meat and dairy industry got really scared of that, and it relates obviously to the show, and put a lot of money into undermining that. And the oil and gas industry was responsible in a big way for making gas the kind of default for, the standard for cooking on gas stoves. So I think there is a risk that is going to continue. I don't think there's a risk. I think that it will, there's a big opening for that. But the good news is, we started Reality Exchange and Rare. Obviously, you know this, but for everybody else, we put together a task force this year with unscripted production companies from some of the biggest studios to, other really exciting indie production companies to basically come together and figure out what the unscripted industry needs in order to advance this work. It had been a little bit neglected as like a collective. And so we wanted to remedy that. And we got, just speaking of research, this was on our research panel, we got a lot of amazing insights from that are really going to help us propel this work moving forward in the next year plus. And we're excited to share some of that, in the future. But the main thing I think we found is that the producers overwhelmingly in this space, the creators in this space, were really passionate about this topic. They want to create entertainment, but they also want to have a positive impact. And we have the means and the mechanisms to empower them to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all your work and for everything. A round of applause. Thank you. So we are going to now go from sort of smaller moments to something kind of much larger and very explicit about climate change. We're going to look at an episode of Madam Secretary, the long-running political drama from CBS, starring Téa Leoni. In season 5, an episode called The New Normal, the Secretary of State, Elizabeth McCord, has to work to evacuate and safely relocate the entire population of an island nation, Nauru, as it's being impacted by a climate change-fueled super typhoon. So we have a clip for that.
Please tell me that it's shifted.
So what I love about that show is that it does not shy away, that episode does not shy away at all from really bringing home and making real the emotional pain of losing from climate change, but also very actively engages with the policy issues. So again, you will see this structure a lot. What we did was we took the show right prior. Both of them are similarly paced, same cast, same sort of structure. And what we did was we got participants to randomly watch one or the other. Here, what we did was design the study in a way to be able to look at the longitudinal effect of exposure over time. So we measured people before watching, 2 to 3 days prior, immediately after watching, 3 days after watching, and 10 to 15 days after watching. So we can kind of watch the decay effect happen. And again, obviously, we focused on climate policy as well as some psychosocial indicators for climate action. I hope you have seatbelts on. I'm going to move fast because that clock is ominous. Okay, what we saw was changes in perceived threat, changes in perceived worry, the increase in support for government action, but also movement on really hard to move things around climate justice, including the fact that climate is not going to impact us equally and that certain climate policies are going to be necessary as part of a just future, including reparations for those who are most vulnerable, as well as accepting climate migrants. The fact that we could get movement on this stuff is super exciting. These are hard to move variables. And what we noticed was that although there is a drop 3 days later, surprisingly, and I have to just admit to being surprised, I did not expect this. I thought this graph would be very neat and they would have merged by the time 15 days passed or 10 days passed. But surprisingly, a lot of these results, the effects persisted, at least in the midterm, right? Short to midterm. And one thing I did not mention that is incredibly exciting is that self-identification as a single issue climate voter, that means I will not vote for a candidate unless they agree with me on climate policy, the odds of self-identifying bumped up by 3 times. And even 15 days later, that was 2 times higher than baseline. This is super important. Only 3%, according to the YPCCC, the Yale research, only 3% currently list climate as their top issue. And currently in this election, it's 19th. So power of entertainment here really coming through.
Yeah, I think it really shows sort of, these are hard to move attitudes. In 2024, climate migration is not an easy thing for people to talk about. And so to show, to see this sort of support kind of grow from the power of storytelling is remarkable. And shout out to Anna Jane Joyner of Good Energy, who consulted on this episode, and Alex Maggio, the writer, as well. So with that said, sometimes maybe a movie won't even say the word climate change. Maybe it's an allegory. So why not look at probably one of the biggest climate allegories of our time, the incredible Don't Look Up. So I am very pleased to welcome Staci Roberts-Steele. Staci is the co-producer of Don't Look Up, which broke streaming records upon its release and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Staci is now the managing director of Yellow Dot Studios, a nonprofit production studio to raise awareness and inspire action on the climate emergency. Please welcome Staci Roberts-Steele.
She got way more love than that dog than I did. Now I'm offended.
I know. And I had to walk past a table of glass and knock it over.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Obviously, Don't Look Up is incredible. For those who haven't seen it, it follows Leo DiCaprio and Jen Lawrence. Jen, as if we're friends. Jennifer
Yes.
Lawrence, who play 2 low-level astronomers who must go on a media tour to warn the world of the impending comet. We do have a brief little clip here, and then we will share some insights and have a conversation with Staci.
So how certain is this?
There's 100% certainty of impact.
Sit tight and assess.
Yay!
Okay, keep those seatbelts fastened. We're going to move very, very fast. As before, we randomly assign people to either watch Don't Look Up plus a marketing video featuring Leo talking about his connection to climate, as well as connecting the allegory to climate, or one of 5 control films that were popular at the same time that Don't Look Up came out. Participants were recruited from 10 countries, and the study measures should by now start looking familiar. We did include some measures that were relevant to the themes of the movie as well. It's not surprising that the allegory did not in fact produce alone very systematic movement on the variables that we measured. However, once you connect it with that marketing video featuring Leo, we saw a lot more systematic movement on the variables of interest, and that include threat to society and worry. Again, that should start sounding familiar. This is very exciting. Willingness to take costly action, likelihood to take action, and a willingness to sign up for an email, so information seeking around how to take action. And as with Madam Secretary, there was an increase in self-identification as a single issue voter. So speaking again to the power of entertainment. For the specific themes that the movie covered, we saw an increase in the sense that bad actors and social problems are getting in the way of climate action. Increase in the perception of threat across a variety of dimensions, from economic to social to environmental, and a decrease in the perception that other people and institutions are currently taking action.
Yeah.
Nice job.
So, Staci, thank you so much for being here. I'm curious, did any of these insights sort of resonate with how you were expecting maybe audiences would react to the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we didn't totally know going in. I know Adam, when he was writing the film, Adam McKay, filmmaker, Big Short, Succession, all that stuff. When he was writing it, I think the idea more came from, we all think people have this covered, and I think with even personally, we felt, okay, we're recycling, we're driving Priuses, we're good. Like someone's handling all the other stuff. And so it kind of came up of like this idea, Adam read the 2018 IPCC report, and then he made everyone at the office read it as well. Highlights. And after that, it was like, we were like, oh, wow, there's all these solutions that we should be doing, and we're not doing them quickly enough, we're not scaling up and all that sort of stuff. So I think he was sort of panicked and came from that place and was like, all right, I'm gonna write something about the fact that we think people have it covered and they don't. And so seeing these results were really fun because I think a lot of people related to it in that way, and just seeing that watching a film makes you want to take whatever new steps, was inspiring.
Yeah, and I loved all the various sort of like conversation components around the film, given that it was an allegory. And I think often we think about sort of, inspiring audiences just through the film and the TV itself, and not necessarily all the other pieces that come with a film release.
Right.
So how do you sort of think about those other facets, like as a producer?
Yeah. I think, typically it's like, we just go, we make a movie, we give it to the marketing department, we're like, yay, get it out there. But this in particular was really fun because it was a way that we could see how a short form worked. Also just, it being a satirical film, we knew certain people might not get it. And so having this little bridge to have people understand it was great. And it was a lot of the reason we started Yellow Dot. Basically the idea that like short form is a great way to tell the story of climate because everything is changing so quickly that, anything that we talk about doing, if you put it in a 2-hour film, it's going to take a couple of years. Like the world has changed by then. I mean, even with Don't Look Up, Adam wrote it in December of 2019. We were cast and going to Boston to film in March 2020. Then some things happened in the world that shut it down. And so we took a break for 4 months, and during those 4 months, the movie changed. And so, or the world changed. And so he had to rewrite the movie just to kind of make it crazier because the world had gotten crazier than the movie. And so, I think that like with all of that, we just realized like short form, we can tell a quick story. And then also reaching all these different types of people. Like with climate, we're in this place where like, we're not just trying to convince a certain demographic or, we're trying to speak to the entire world and many different types of people. And so with short form, we can make something that we know will appeal to one audience. We can make it very quickly. A few weeks later, we can make something else that has a similar message maybe, but is for a different group. And so, it's just a really great way to kind of get it across a lot of different types of people and things.
Yeah. And I think, with your obviously there's the sort of the form of it all, right? Like Yellow Dot very much focuses on short form, but I think kind of like high level, with your background sort of in like traditional film and TV, and then at Yellow Dot, like what do you think is the biggest difference of your approach between the two?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because of like the Yellow Dot team, there's 4 of us. 3 of us came from film and TV, and one of them was like more from the climate world. And we immediately were talking about the fact that like, I think, when you, in the film and TV world, when you write a movie or something like that, you think about, okay, what's a story that inspires me? What are my friends going to enjoy? What do I like? And you don't really worry about what the message is, I think if you do, then it might feel a little forced. So a lot of people shy away from that. And I think with the climate movement, what we've seen is a lot of times coming into it with, okay, what is the message? And then let's figure out the story to get there. And that was just very backwards for us because I think it made it not feel like an organic thing that was relatable. So we're trying more so to just, we have folders and folders of ideas of sketches and all different types of things. And we kind of try and meet with different organizations to say, okay, what is your message? And we have this idea that we could help push into that box opposed to trying to work in reverse.
Yeah. And, Don't Look Up, a sort of opposing thought. I mean, Don't Look Up was this massive cultural zeitgeist moment. Like everyone was talking about it. I remember that Christmas. Everyone. What is the one sort of thing that you saw? Like if you could leave this room with sort of a thought, like what's the one that you saw from that moment of sort of the whole world really kind of coming together around it that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think the big part of it is that, we all have something to say, anything we're all doing. And sort of, if you look at Adam writing this film, it's like he knows comedy. He took that and then being inspired by like, oh, wow, things are really bad, and putting those 2 things together. So I think it's kind of looking at what do you like doing? What are your interests? What are your hobbies? That sort of thing. And pairing it with what excites you in the climate movement. Do you want to like cook a plant-based dinner party for all your friends because you like entertaining? Like that's something that's probably more helpful than recycling. So we should all recycle though. Keep recycling. But I think there's just things like that we can all do. We don't have to think about it as, okay, I need to be in the climate movement to do it. We can all kind of be in the climate movement and taking all of our own skills to fuel the fire. Pun intended? Okay, I don't know. But yes.
I love that. And I think that's a great segue that I definitely did not set up to our next speaker, because I think this idea of sort of all these various kind of people coming together really hits at sort of the idea of impact producing.
Yep.
So with that, I want to thank Staci again for this incredible conversation and the work.
Did I say the Mathura part? And actually, taking us back to 2022 for a second, that film did inspire people in France. There's an organization unconnected to the movie that took that moment on screen and then used it to organize massive climate protests. At the time, there was a presidential election happening. A month prior to that election, only 2% of the election media was covering climate. And they took that, they created a lookup day, and 80,000 people showed up. And it changed some of the narrative around the presidential election in France. So, moments on screen showing up in the real world, creating inspiring impact. With that,
and so with that, I want to welcome our next and final guest. Marion Ollinger works at the intersection of culture and community as an impact strategist, producer, director, and creator. She was the lead impact producer for the Sundance, Peabody, and Emmy-winning documentary, The Territory. It's incredible if you haven't seen it, as well as the fiction feature, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, also incredible. Marion, how about that? So very quickly, can you share what is an impact producer? What does that mean? What do you do?
Of course. So impact producers will work in close collaboration with film teams, communities, and strategic partners to maximize a film's possibility of drive change.
That's incredible. And I think we've seen sort of examples of that kind of throughout this conversation, right? The example Anirudh gave of sort of organizers coming together in France, but we've also seen all these various pieces of whether it's social media around Recipe for Disaster or marketing around Don't Look Up, kind of working together. So as an impact producer, how do you think about those various, are you just focused on the film, or do you also think about the bigger picture again of marketing, PR, organizers? How do you kind of develop that strategy?
No, we absolutely think at the big picture. Shout out to Doc Society, who has been an incredible actor in building impact production as a field. We often, when we think about impact production, we think about 4 different dynamics as we describe them, which are changing minds, changing behaviors, building communities, and creating change, creating structural change, right? That means that we will think about all the way from working with very specific communities on the front lines, all the way to working with policymakers or people who are really influential and can enact change on a broader level.
And that's amazing. And I know as a former impact producer, it's so much work. So shout out to every single impact producer out there. This whole session has been on research. And how do you use research, and how do you think research could inform how you think about films can inspire change in the world and bringing together all these pieces?
Yeah. Well, first I think we need to understand how people relate to what they're watching and how can they actually feel like they can be part of something. I love the research you guys did with Don't Look Up, for example. And I remember when I saw it for the first time, I remember what you now described as a marketing piece was them described to me as an impact piece. It's very easy. It's not easy actually, but it's we see oftentimes people watch something and they will be moved by it and they'll feel, oh my God, I need to do something about it. But if you actually don't create the space and actually offer people alternatives for how they can engage, they won't. Everyone has 1,000 things to deal with in their lives, and it's very easy to feel moved by something and just move on. So I think part of our role is to actually really create a way for audiences to engage, right? And if we don't know what move audiences to engage, you actually don't know how to do that. So for me, research is extremely helpful because it informs my work directly, right? So how can I actually make someone go from feeling moved by something to actually do something about it, right?
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think, if there's any climate funders in the room, fund research around entertainment because it's so helpful for this space.
Yeah.
And, we're coming up on time. And I just think, to your point, there's so many different words that you can kind of throw around in these conversations, whether it's, inspiring audiences and really kind of like driving change in the real world. And I think ultimately what I want to leave for folks as a takeaway is that we really do all can find a role to play in this, right? Whether you are a creator, a filmmaker, or if you are a marketing professional, if you're a community organizer, you can really find ways to rally around entertainment and these like very important moments of attention to drive change. We would never expect, or maybe even want, a film or a TV show to do all of this all at one time, all on its own. That would be crazy. I don't know who wants to watch that sort of stuff. So I think just really identify what your role could be. And finding ways to kind of inspire audiences at home could be a very powerful thing to do, right? No matter where you are in the climate movement or in entertainment. Anirudh, would you like to kind of take us home?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we would love for you to walk away with is that entertainment can inspire people in surprising and diverse ways, right? We just showed you examples of how brief moments move norms, how they can alter perceived benefits, how stronger moments and issue-focused films and TV shows can make issue awareness, threat perception, worry really loom large in your mind, change your self-identification as a climate voter. And then we saw, cases where a cooking show can boost your confidence, your self-efficacy, even your intention to take action when it's paired with social media content. So really, the takeaway should be kind of liberating. Each story will have its own beautiful way in which it can inspire audiences, and there is a diversity of ways that can happen.
Right. So, I want to thank Mariana for doing incredible work as an impact producer, kind of joining together the climate movement and entertainment. I want to thank Cyle, who's putting these solutions and kind of accelerating this in the unscripted space, and Staci, who is doing great work, formerly at Hyperobject, but now the wonderful Yellow Dot, if you don't follow their head. I think it's We Are Yellow Dot. I don't know if anyone is a Yellow Dot in the audience, but yes, We Are Yellow Dot, and so give them a follow. And thank you all for coming today, listening to us talk about science and research for almost an hour. We appreciate it. And we hope that you can kind of take this out and help us all inspire audiences. So thank you.
Thank you.